extend my personal sympathies to the families and people who have lost their homes and their loved ones in the recent fires. In terms of rebuilding, I think it's obviously a very emotional period for many. I think they really need to sit down and talk to some experts in the first instance. But I think it's also very important that when examining their houses that have been burnt either partially or fully, that they need to take into account the age of the house in the first instance. So what they need to do is to make the property safe, and particularly those people who have had homes in terms of pre-1985, where the likelihood of asbestos being used is likely to be high, and therefore in the first instance it's very important that they make the site safe, they talk to experts before thinking about rebuilding.
So when you say needing to be able to determine dangers, obviously such as asbestos for those houses built some 15 or more years ago, how are they best able to do that? Who are they able to turn to in order to seek that advice?
Look, in the first instance, most people should know what the age of the home was in terms of when it was built. If not, they should determine that by either going to the local council or getting an expert in. So that's the first thing they need to do. The second thing, obviously, is that if they should avoid rummaging through the old building, the burnt-out building, because they do run the risk in terms of asbestos contamination and also the risk of whatever remaining part of the house collapsing on them. So it's very important that they do that in the first instance and talk to an expert, talk to their local council.
In terms of being able to move ahead with the process of rebuilding, once determining the status of the property as it's left, what are the appropriate ways of going about this, given that we do in New South Wales have now some quite strict measures which were introduced in 2001, so what's involved with being able to rebuild in such bushfire-prone areas?
Look, once again, you've got to engage with an expert. In the first instance, once again, the first step is to settle the insurance with the insurance company, because I think that's very important before going ahead, because rebuilding can be a very expensive exercise, and as you've quite rightly said, Miriam, there are now tougher rules in terms of building, and therefore it's important that you get the financial side of it right. Then once again, talk to an expert in terms of getting the house redesigned to the modern standards, making quite sure that as far as practicable, the house asbestos can survive the bushfire. Now, be mindful that no house can ever be fire risk free. Living in the bush has its inherent dangers, and I think it's an important part of that is making sure that the trees around the house are properly managed, and of course that becomes a difficult area where local councils in some cases make it very difficult for homeowners to be able to cut down trees around the houses.
In terms of the houses themselves though, what changes have been made to make them more resilient to bushfire? What are people looking at in terms of building a new home that will be able to actually withstand some of these sorts of conditions?
Look, the point I want to make right up front, you cannot build a house to be totally fire-proof. Just, while technically it may be possible, the reality is you never can do that. So I think people should be very mindful that they can never build a fire-proof house, realistically. I mean, you can, but then it ends up being a concrete bunker that people simply can't live in. The new standards are around the windows, the doors, the way the roofs are designed to stop ambers coming into the house, and so essentially they have been sensible changes, but the house for all intents and purposes will look the same, except the way the windows are designed, the way the front entries are designed, or the door entries are designed to stop amber coming in, are the sort of key structural changes that have been made to the current design rules.
Do we have any idea of how long it might take for people to be able to rebuild in these areas? For instance, will having some 300 odd homes that have been damaged or destroyed mean that there won't be enough builders available to be able to rebuild there?
Yes, that's certainly one part of the process people need to be mindful of. while it might have usually taken 6 months to build a house, when there are many houses involved in a bushfire area, when you looked at the Canberra experience, it's taken up to 2 years for people to be able to rebuild their homes. So people need to be very patient because access to bushfire areas can be difficult, and certainly when you look at the Victorian experience as well, that's certainly been the case. So people should be very mindful that they may not be able to rebuild their home in a short period of time. One could well be the shortage of builders, but secondly, it's just the sheer complexity in getting council approvals, being able to get access to the site, because some of the sites, for good reasons, are not available because there are coroner inquiries and the like, and local councils also tend to reassess the whole building codes in their area, and all these processes add to the delays, and which can lead up to 2 years before a house can be completed.
Chief Executive of Master Builders Australia, Wilhelm Harnisch, thank you so much for your time.